So today's talk title, I came up with this one quite a few months ago. It's the yin and yang of community. And when I started doing the research on this topic back probably last week of May or so, I was surprised at how many hits I got on Google about yin and yang in community. It was like, oh, well, look at that, in community building, in community being together, in partnerships, in business, and everything. It was all associated with it. And so I had a plethora of things to choose from. So if you're not familiar with the concept of yin and yang, it's that black and white symbol that you often see associated with, oftentimes with kung fu or martial arts or things like that, sometimes with yoga. It's a Eastern Asian idea, mostly comes from China. The earliest recollections of it in writing are from the Tao Te Ching, written by Lao Tzu, which is the way, and it's 84 verses of how to bring balance into your life, how to make things equal. The way is all about the middle way. It's all about being not too much on one extreme or the other. It's also referred to in Confucianism. Confucius wrote about the yin and yang, the balance of things. It's also in the I Ching, which is the Chinese book of wisdom. But prior to that, the earliest recollections of it are from bones, animal bones that were used in divination. And they would carve the symbols of the yin yang on to the animal bones. And back then, it was used mostly to represent ideas in nature. So, earth and heaven, the sun, the moon, mountains, the water, fire, warm, cold. So it had to do more with the things, the natural elements around the world, around that people were experiencing in their lives. And then from that, these authors like Lao Tzu and Confucius began to incorporate that into the work that they were doing. But it's all about bringing balance into our lives. But if you're familiar with it, it's a circular symbol that's black and white, but it's not a straight division between the black and the white. It's thicker in the black and on one side, and it curves into this narrow point, and on the other side, the white starts off big, and it curves up to this narrow point. And then within each white section is a little bit of black, and within each black section is a little bit of white. So they represent balance, but not always equal. So sometimes one is more dominant than the other, but always, even when there's this dominant part of the yin or the yang, there's a little bit of a component of it that's already active in there at all times. So the yin side is often referred to as the more passive side. It's like in our bodies, we have a yin and yang in the natural flow of our bodies during the day. During the day, we are yang. We are active. We are vibrant. We are out there doing things. At nighttime, when we start to relax and rest, we become more yin, a little more passive, a little more calm, a little more receptive. And so as we're working with these ideas of the yin and the yang and how it refers to things, like I said, we talk about it in different aspects, and generally they're opposites. So like the yin is female, the yang is male. The yin is dark, the yang is light. The yin is passive, the yang is active. The yin is receptive, the yang is directive. And so they seem to be like polar opposites of each other, but in actuality, it's a continuum that moves from one end to the other, where we have this ebb and flow of it moving back and forth. And so as we talk about this idea in community, we can look at it in ways on that same kind of continuum. So in community, a community is made up of individuals. And so on one end of the spectrum, we would have total individuality. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we would have that idea of community. Communitarian, no, I'm never going to get it. There's too many vowels in this thing. Communitarianism. That was good, wasn't it? You can tell I taught English a long time. One end is this idea of community, and the other end is this idea of the individual needs. Now, if we take those ideas to either extreme, that's when we wind up with problems in our community. So, for instance, On the community side, the extreme side of that would be something like what might have been felt in communism, where everything is about the community, where there's no individual identity, where there's no individual way to express. Everything has to be done through a community kind of expression. The opposite end on individualism, if we take it all the way to that extreme, we wind up with narcissism, where it's all about me and nobody else. And so we try to avoid those extreme ends, just like we do with the yin and yang. There are times when one is much more dominant than the other, but we flow back and forth between the two. We flow back and forth between the two ideas, the two extremes in there. United States is a very much, and well, most of the Western culture is very much about individuality. We have the self-determination that we talked about in the 17 and 1800s. This whole, I'm going to go out there and do it. If it is to be, it's up to me. That kind of idea where that's great until it's taken to that extreme. And we often see that extreme showing up in those narcissistic tendencies. And I don't know about you, but that word narcissism has been really prevalent in our society for the last 10 years or so. I mean, it's like I hadn't heard of it very much before that. I heard about it from, Greek literature from Narcissus, who was, liked to look at himself in the water. So that's where I think of it. But we've taken it to that extreme now where we have so many different people in our lives showing up with these narcissistic tendencies. And it's like it becomes problematic. But on the other end of that, we have this community idealism that kind of gets rid of some of our individuality. And because it gets rid of our individuality, it also gets rid of our individual responsibility. So we have these communities, and people in the communities are so used to everything being done on a community basis, it's easy to say, well, I'll let somebody else do it. I don't need to be bothered with that. Someone else can take care of that part for me. Because there's no individual accountability on that side of the spectrum. But to be in community together, we need to balance those things out. We need to have freedom to express ourselves as individuals. And yet we have this sense of community responsibility. In our world, especially in the last, definitely in the last 3 years, we've kind of lost our sense of community. When we became isolated and we couldn't be around other people, we had a tendency to lose that idea of community. And so we're at a point now in our world where we're building community back again. We're trying to find ways of being in community together. This was, part of this was because of the pandemic, but part of it's also been the last 10 or 15 years with the prevalence of social media and the internet and ways of coming together and getting that need to be with other people, but without any individual responsibility. We can come together. How many of you have ever been on Zoom and you wanted to watch a Zoom thing, but you weren't really into it, so you turned your camera off and you muted yourself and you just kind of were there? There's no individual accountability there. There's no individual responsibility. There's no one there saying, come and join us in community. You're there, but you're not really there. You're kind of on the periphery of it and not yet fully participating. And so we're now in that stage in our world where we need to be bringing this back into a sense of community where there is an area for people to be individuals, and yet there is the individual responsibility that is allowing us to come together as community for the betterment of everyone, not just for ourselves as we would in our individuality over here on that side. So we're out of practice at being in community, and it's something that we need to begin to practice more. We've tried to set up a few ways here for people to come together in community, and some of them have been very successful, and some of them not quite so much. And so we just keep trying different ways to come together in community. We are so grateful for this beautiful location that we have here where we can actually come together in person now, where we hadn't been able to do that prior to finding this location. And until we have our new building, it's such a godsend to have this place where we can come together on Sunday mornings and meet. And so we're so grateful for that. So as we are building our community back, there are three aspects of community that are so important. And the one is the being part of it, where we are being in community together, where we are being our individual selves, where we are being our best. So beingness is one aspect of community. Another aspect of community is doing, because we can't just be together and not have doing happening too. And sometimes we need to have people doing things so that other people can be being in the situation. So it's kind of a balance of that. And the third aspect of it that's so vital for community is learning. Because that is the real reason we come together in community, is to learn from each other. Is to be together in community where we are sharing our experiences with each other, where we are growing from what we hear, where we are learning how somebody else dealt with something, and then we're applying that to our lives. And so the learning aspect of Centers for Spiritual Living has always been one of our cornerstones. We have a very robust education program, which allows us to come together and learn about different principles and practices and topics and things like that. But the thing that's the best about being together in classes is what we get from each other. The experiences that we have, the friendships that we develop, the bonds that we are made in our learning experiences last a lifetime. That's one of the blessings of community. And so this idea of being in community, of doing in community, and learning in community it all has to come together to make things work right now. And so as we are moving into this idea of building this community that we have, we're going to be giving you lots of opportunities to practice being in community, doing in community, and learning in community. Lots of different ways that we can bring that all together to let us all have a greater experience of what it means to be this community of Center for Spiritual Living Greater Las Vegas. You know, without each one of you individually, there is no community. There is no community without each one of us. We each need to be here to be participating in that. And just like the yin and the yang, sometimes when we're in community, we are in that receptive mode. We are in community to receive. Sometimes when we're in community, we have to be in a more directive mode, where we are actually creating things for other people to receive. Because just like that, that law of circulation we talk about, if you don't have anything to receive, then your giving stops. And if there's no giving, then there's nothing there to be received. And so it's that balance, that cycle. Just like the yin and the yang, we have to have that constant flow of giving and receiving to make it all work. We have a wonderful group of dedicated volunteers, starting with our leadership council, which helps us plan everything, helps monitor the budget, makes the decisions for things like that. We could use more people in our leadership council. We could really use some more people in there to help us with this, because it becomes a massive task. Right now, it's been pretty easy to manage it, but as we get closer to being in the building, then there's going to be many more opportunities for people to step in that form of leadership. We have excellent volunteers like Evelyn and Madge, who handle our offering almost every Sunday morning. They're just wonderful, always here, we can count on them, and it's such a blessing to have that. But they need a break too sometimes. And so if you're interested in doing that, we'll have opportunities for that. There are all kinds of ways. We have a new building committee that is starting to meet again, that is planning different events, but we need people to help serve on the committees to plan those events, to make those events happen, to bring the things that we envision for our community into fruition for us, for people to receive what it is we have to offer. And so without you, there is no community. There's a few people here on staff, and we have a few great volunteers. But there's lots of opportunity for people to be in service in lots of different ways here. And so as we're going through our next couple of months together, I'd like you to keep that in mind. Where is it that you would like to serve? And we're not asking you to serve all the time, because you need it to also receive. But we need people who are doing, and we need people who are receiving. And then, of course, through all of that, we're learning. We're learning about how to interact with other people. We're learning about how to plan things. We're learning about how Some things work and some things don't work. We're learning lots of different things with that. And so as we're moving into this new incarnation in our building, there's going to be lots of different opportunities for you to do that. You know, one of the things about being in community is the relationships that we've built here. And so building relationships happens when we are engaged with each other in these wonderful projects. I know that there are friends that I have right now today that I began working with as a volunteer in the bookstore. I see some of them in front of me right now. These are people who got together with me and we did wonderful things and we had fun. And we built these wonderful relationships through the act of service to our community. Events, all kinds of event committees and things like that happen. You know, we want to have a very vibrant and robust community. And that takes each person stepping up in a different way to make that happen. And again, it's also balancing it. Watching those extremes. We never get to a point where we are burned out. If we get to a point where we're burned out, we've neglected our receptive mode, our beingness. We've spent too much of our energy on our doingness, and so we need to begin to balance that out. Let it happen, let it flow, and let it be that yin and yang that we're looking for in life, that middle way that allows us to experience the extremes during certain points without becoming overwhelmed with it all. And so it's always an opportunity for us to do that, to be in community together through this experience of balance. So I'd like to take us into a little contemplation right now, just to see what's calling you. There are lots of things that are going to be happening, and there are lots of things we haven't even thought of yet. But I know that Spirit is out there planting seeds, and it's just looking for that receptive mind that's going to be there to catch a glimpse of it and let it germinate inside of them. And so let's go into a spiritual practice here of contemplation, of just beginning to see what it is how Spirit would like to express through each one of us in this idea of community. So I invite you to just, if you're comfortable, go ahead and close your eyes. Check in on your body. Sometimes our body will like to distract us from our contemplation. So just check in your body. Notice if there's any place that's tight or tense, and just breathe into it. I just do that by visualizing my breath moving right to that spot in my body. And just scan on down through your body. You start at the top and move on down through your torso, past your pelvis, into your legs. Check your arms, your hands, feet. And so as we are thinking of this idea of this community that we are building together, it is the physical building itself. It is our small group ministries. It is our practitioner and ministerial corps. It is our wonderful volunteers who step in sacred service. It is those of us sitting in the chairs today, those of us listening online, those of us who will hear this message later, and those who are yet to come to us. This is our community. And so just sit with that idea of all of these wonderful beings coming together. Our new sanctuary will hold about 150 people. I want you to visualize 150 chairs filled. We have classrooms for our youth. Visualize those classrooms teeming with activity, with laughter, childish giggles, and overflowing joy. Just feel that bubbling up. Hear the wonderful music that the congregation is singing together. Music that inspires us, that lifts us, that invigorates us, that makes us want to be more than what we've been before. Music that touches us at a soul level, where something comes alight within us that wasn't there before. Imagine the people as they are walking into our sanctuary being greeted with enthusiasm and joy, being welcomed into our spiritual home. Visualize events that are happening. Parties and music, concerts, classes, workshops, guest speakers, and things that we have never before done as events at our center. Just feel that energy of it, moving up and bubbling up. And know that it is looking for the right place, the right outlet, to bring it into fruition in our center. And now ask yourself, where in all of this am I open to receiving? In all of this activity, in all of the good that is happening, what part of it is there for me to receive? Feel yourself receiving that. Feel it coming alive inside of you. What emotions are bubbling up in you as you think of receiving all of this good that is coming to you? And what is it that you need to do to keep it flowing into your life? All of this wonderful good that we have to offer here in our beloved community. And now, where am I willing to give? Where am I willing to be more active? Where am I willing to be directive? Where am I willing to be of service? What am I called to participate in? So all of these wonderful things that are happening in our center. What is mine to do? We speak of these actions of giving and being directive in three ways. We give our time, our talent, and our treasures. Where am I willing to give my time for this community? What talents do I have that I can share with others in this community? And what gifts and treasures am I willing to put out for this highest and greatest good of our community unfolding right now? Where am I willing to give? Or what am I willing to give? And now just imagine yourself in this cycle of the yin and the yang, flowing from giving to receiving, and back to giving and receiving. And knowing that in this process of giving and receiving, I take time to be. I make sure that I'm doing. And I learn from those around me. And just feel yourself caught in that gentle cycle of it moving from receptive to directive, from giving to receiving, from being to doing. Just feel the movement of all of that. And allow it to become tangible within you, visceral, where you feel it moving in and out, back and forth. So if you would, just go ahead and take in a nice deep breath. Let go of anything that needs to be let go of. Just breathe it on out. Bring your awareness back to the space around you. When you're ready, open your eyes. There is no community without you. You are a vital part of that. And being open to receiving from this community, as well as giving to the community, are vital components of that ebb and flow, that yin and yang, that keeps us in a harmonious relationship with our community, that allows us to thrive in the community and to become more than we ever thought we could be. That's what I found here. I found a place that let me grow, a place that let me be who I was, a place with people that loved me for it. And that is my wish for everyone that walks through our doors, that they too find this place of connection. Because it will change our lives and it will change our world. And it makes each moment here a blessing. Let's take this into prayer. If you're not familiar with our form of prayer, we call it affirmative prayer. We have 5 stages. In the first stage, I speak about that one universal presence. You can call it whatever you want to call it. I often call it God, Spirit, the divine. Lately, I've been calling it that creative love intelligence. It really works for me. Then I unify us with it. If God is all there is, and I know I'm one with God, then there's nothing else to know for that. And in the third stage, I just speak spiritual truth. The fourth stage is to give thanks, because it's always important to be in gratitude. And then we let it go. So if you would, turn with me as I invite our spiritual practitioners to stand and join us. And so right here and right now, I know that there is only one power, one presence, one divine creative love intelligence that has brought forth everything into existence. It is the isness and the allness and the fullness of all life. It is that beginning and end, that ebb and flow, that yin and yang. For that one encompasses everything, and yet is still one. Because I know there's only one, I know that I am one with it. That all that spirit, that divine intelligence is who I am too. And because I know this is true for me, I know this is true for each and every one of us. For we are all unique and perfect manifestations of that creative love intelligence. I know that each one of us has within us an inherent sense of balance. That while our lives at sometimes are one extreme or the other, there is a continuous ebb and flow between experiences that keeps us in that harmonious relationship with all of life. For I know that is what that love intelligence is. It is balance and harmony. It is all of that encompassed into one thing. And our lives, each one of us, is that experience of the divine, right here and right now, moving from one extreme to the other, sometimes staying in one place more than the other, but continuously on a journey, on a movement of flow in and out of our lives. And how good it is to know this, how good it is to experience it, and how good it is to see it happening in this community right here and right now. And I just express my gratitude for all that is unfolding for Center for Spiritual Living, Greater Las Vegas, and each one of its community members, our friends, our visitors, the entire family within this center. I'm so grateful for this. And I release this word into the law that always says yes, that knows no limits, that never experiences lack, that is a constant movement, the ebb and flow of spirit into life. I let it go and I let it be. And together we say, and so it is. Amen.